Have you ever considered the power of negative energy? What if I told you that the simple act of ridicule could open you up to spiritual disturbances? Prepare yourself for this story of an act of playful mockery that descends into terrifying manifestations. This episode of Halloween Spooktacular is kind of an extension of my last video about the true story of Annabelle, the haunted doll. Because in today's video, I'm going to share someone's personal experience of opening a portal for disturbing spiritual phenomena to come through after she visited the Annabelle doll live. Before we get into it, hi friends, welcome back to Meaningful Motivations with Tracy Erickson. And of course, if you are new to this channel, welcome. My name is Tracy Erickson. And I really want to just take a moment to thank you all for being here, for spending your time with me, and for clicking the like button down below so that my video can be favored by the algorithms. And of course, as you watch this video, always feel free to leave a comment down in the comment section. And if you want to see more of my content, be sure to subscribe and turn on the notifications. As I was researching for my last episode of Halloween Spooktacular, I came across this article on wickedhorror.com by Marissa Martinez. And it was titled, "My Life Turned into a Nightmare After Meeting the Real Annabelle Doll." She wrote, "Since I was a kid, I've immersed myself in watching horror movies and shows, and I've thoroughly enjoyed the thrill of being scared, regardless of the nightmares that haunt me after the fact. However, I never thought my life would turn into a horror movie. But one day at work, when I was scrolling on my social media feed, an event titled An Evening with Annabelle popped up. The site was created by Tony Spera, who carries on the work of Ed and Lorraine Warren and is married to their daughter Judy Spera. This site was selling tickets for an event hosted by Tony, an event with Annabelle, and the event would consist of dinner, showcasing items from the Warrens' occult room, and a finale viewing of the real Annabelle doll. As I read that first part of the story, it dawned on me that Hollywood and the entertainment industry as a whole really does desensitize us to these negative images, thoughts, ideas, and stories. And it comes to a point where we consume far too much negative influence into our minds. And so it's through this desensitization that sometimes we're opening ourselves up, like opening a portal to allow even more negativity to come in. The event took place in Monroe, Connecticut, in a large Italian restaurant called Roberto's. The backside of the room was filled with antique occult objects, the shadow doll, and the conjuring mirror. They are some of the most noteworthy items from the Warrens' occult room. At the center of the back was a tall, lengthy object covered with a sheet on top. Everyone knew Annabelle was underneath. After finding out that this event was taking place at an Italian restaurant named Roberto's in Connecticut, I decided to look it up. And it turns out that this restaurant, Roberto's, is permanently closed. And right away, I got this little niggling feeling inside that was like, I wonder if this restaurant closed due to some kind of negativity that was possibly brought in with all of these occult items, including the Annabelle doll. The story continues, saying that Tony was a great speaker and he walked through the life of Ed and Lorraine Warren. The event went perfectly at first, but the evening took a heavier turn when they started listening to real possession tapes. She says, I can still hear the dark words from the tape as clear as day in my head. Tony hesitantly paused the tape and confessed he didn't like to play the entirety because something evil may manifest itself if you listen for too long. The dark voice on the tape was even making jokes. Tony told the room that dark entities enjoy making jokes, and possessions aren't how you always see them depicted in the movies. When it was time to unveil Annabelle, Tony gave a few frightening words beforehand. He warned everyone not to mock the doll or to say anything negative, and not to tease her. Everyone was silently nervous. Tony talked about a man attending one of the events that proceeded to mock Annabelle. When he left that night, he got into a serious accident on his motorcycle and was found dead. One by one, people got up from their seat and took a photo with Annabelle. As I waited in line, I kept thinking, okay, just take the photo. Don't mock her. Just go quickly. Don't mock. I kept repeating that same phrase in my head. Somehow, my mind slipped into a dark place and I mocked her. In my mind, I thought about how hideous she looked inside of her box. I screamed internally to put that thought away, and I took my photo with her. We all know that it's important not to mock the Annabelle doll. Ed and Lorraine Warren were very serious about the energy that this doll was hosting. They both stated that this is not the ghost of a child or something like that. The spirit or the energy that lives within Annabelle, according to Ed and Lorraine Warren, is evil, and the doll is haunted. And this evil energy that lives within the doll is looking to take on a human host. So that is why it's so important not to mock the doll. It's almost like testing the devil, if you will. She goes on saying, it was surreal to be standing next to her. At this point, I was on cloud 9 at the idea of being in the same room with such an infamous object. However, it never occurred to me that I could bring something home with me. And for the next year and a half, I was stuck in a living nightmare. As I settled in back home at my roommate's house, I had just finished eating dinner and was taking my plate downstairs. I remember stepping on the ground, but somehow it felt like I missed a step. I fell and badly twisted my ankle as my glass plate broke into pieces. My roommates thought it was comical as I had to limp up the stairs for the next couple of weeks. My next step in life was finding a place where my kitchen was on the same floor as my bedroom. I looked through many apartments and found one I loved in Long Beach. Although a long commute from my job, I thought it was perfect. I moved in within 2 weeks of applying and was enjoying my own space. Not long after, I started noticing bugs and cockroaches in corners. I'd kill them and they'd be gone for a couple of days. After a while, it got out of hand and I found them everywhere. It wasn't just one or two. It seemed like I was killing 10 roaches every time I turned around. I found them in my lotion, on my bed, in my shower, in my food, and in all my clothes. Apparently, the roaches were coming from my next door neighbor. The elderly woman didn't take care of her cats, never took out her trash, and had stacks of garbage on top of stacks of garbage. Management evicted her and didn't even bother cleaning out her apartment. Within the next few days, my unit had a full-on infestation. I couldn't even put a sock on without checking it first to see if it had roach eggs. I was convinced something was out to get me, and my dream apartment turned into a dwelling from hell. This is how a lot of poltergeist experiences take place, and it's how possessions seem to happen as well. It's progressive. It starts small where you're not real sure what's happening. Maybe you're just being a little clumsy. Maybe you just thought you missed a step and completely twisted your ankle, right? No big deal. You're just being clumsy. Or next thing you know, you're infested with cockroaches and you have a neighbor who you can blame it on. But the thing is that these things start compiling one after another. And as it builds, it's also building the negativity in the mind as well. So it's creating this mind disease. And that is what's also opening that portal. That negativity opens the portal for those negative entities to come in. So that's really how it usually happens, according to other people's experiences, is that by the time the poltergeist is in full attack mode, or by the time someone is fully possessed, it's almost as if they didn't really know it was taking place until it was too late. It's no different for this woman and her story, because we are now progressing to where Annabelle is seemingly causing her physical pain. She said, "One night, I woke up to the sharpest of pains in my stomach at 3 a.m. I couldn't stand up, bend, move, or get out of my bed. All I could do was scream in agony. I was convinced I was dying and called my mom in a panic, so she drove me to the ER in the middle of the night. The nurse ran multiple tests, put in an IV, and stuck me in a private room as I screamed in pain. Doctors found nothing wrong with me and couldn't give me any answers. As it approached dawn, they let me go home, and for a moment, they had me doubting myself and my pain. I went back to my gross apartment and filed a health complaint. There were weeks when I wouldn't even stay in my home out of fear of sleeping in a roach-infested bed. Eventually, I broke my lease and I found a place with my sister. It had everything we wanted and was bug-free. During the same time, I had the flu for 2 weeks and developed a persistent cough not long after my sickness. I went to urgent care twice, and the doctors couldn't find anything wrong. They said it was allergies and put me on medication and an inhaler. I saw different specialists who put me on more medication and ran tests every couple of weeks. My cough grew increasingly more severe. 9 doctor's visits and 5 specialists later, they couldn't diagnose me. So after experiencing those bouts of clumsiness with her first roommate and the cockroach infestation at the next apartment, and now she's at her sister's house and has this strange illness that no one can seem to explain. Now she's starting to believe that this is more than just bad luck. This is not a coincidence. She believes now that Annabelle is actually out to get her. She says, "I'm not the superstitious type, but I was convinced this was more than just a string of bad luck." And then she goes on to explain that one night she kept hearing a rustling at the foot of her bed that sounded a lot like a plastic shopping bag rustling around. It kind of made her a little scared, so she decided to just stay under her blanket and let it continue. For a moment, she thought it was her dog, but it turns out the dog was sleeping on the couch. So the next morning, she woke up and looked everywhere for whatever it was that was making this rustling noise at the foot of her bed. And there was no plastic bag or any other object that could have possibly explained it. So, of course, now her paranoia is growing. Her story goes on, saying soon afterwards, my dog became violently ill. With my excessive coughing, hearing noises in the night, and my poor dog's sudden sickness, I was about ready to lose it. One night, he got off the bed and shat on the carpet. It was really late, and I got up to clean up the mess and take him outside. As I laid back in bed, I noticed that my feet were covered in his feces. I screamed and I jumped in the shower. I threw my sheets in the wash and I put a towel on my bed to use as a blanket. I then inspected my bed as I was confused how he managed to soil my bed without me even noticing. Everything looked fine after inspecting. By this time, I was exhausted and I had work in the morning. As I laid back down, I noticed I still smelled the feces everywhere. I buried my face deeper into my pillow and screamed, and then I felt a wetness on my face. I lifted my head off the pillow, ran to the mirror, and I saw my entire face covered in crap. I called off work the next day. I mean, who wouldn't after that? Like, what? I told the story to my family and friends who all laughed and tried to convince me that I probably didn't check my bed thoroughly. While it was a funny story to tell, it certainly wasn't funny to live. Over the next few months, my sanity was put to the test. I heard constant creaking. I was regularly sick. I heard noises coming from inside my walls. My eyes played tricks on me in the dark. This no longer felt like a home. I started becoming suspicious. That suspicious feeling intensified when I came home from work, walked into my apartment, and saw it. A cockroach on the wall. I can't. When I read that now in this other place, now there's a cockroach on the wall again, there is no way that this isn't an evil entity just tormenting her. How can one person have this much bad luck? The only thing I can think of to explain my string of misfortune was Annabelle. It had to be her. I may not have been possessed by anything, but what manifested was so much worse. The cockroach infestation started all over again. I constantly cleaned my apartment, and I knew I had to take down some of my horror collectibles on my walls, since they were probably messing with my head. At the time, I had Living Dead dolls and Funko Pops on shelves in my bedroom. I had Funko Pops of Chucky, Tiffany, Annabelle, Pinhead, and Jigsaw. There was enough going on in my life that I didn't feel like staring at this memorabilia. To be honest, she's already moved so many times at this point that I'm surprised she still had the horror memorabilia up as decoration in her home. But this is a good time to remind everyone that that's part of the desensitization, is having these evil objects in your home as well. So not only are they taking over in your mind, but they're also seen in your physical environment. So of course, that would, kind of add to the problem here. She even goes on to explain that one night after cleaning her room, she noticed that one of the Funko Pop dolls had fallen off the shelf and was lying on the floor. So she went and picked it up and looked at the box and noticed that it was the Annabelle doll. She said all the other Funko Pops were on the shelf except Annabelle. I drove it to a trash can far away from my house and threw the doll away. Relief never seemed to last long, even when I thought everything was settling. After my sister and I got home from watching a movie, I put my purse down on the counter and grabbed a drink from the fridge. As I turned around and reached inside my purse, a huge cockroach crawled up my arm and made a move toward my face. She also explained another time where they thought someone was in the apartment. So they hid away in a closet for 30 minutes waiting for the police to come, and no one was there. She learned that it was a bad idea to mock the Annabelle doll because it brought so much pain and misfortune into her life after that. But really, it's not only the Annabelle doll itself that you shouldn't be mocking. You shouldn't mock the supernatural. You should never test the devil. And because that's only going to invite more of that into your life. In the end, she says, I trashed the outfit I wore the night I met Annabelle. I threw out all the souvenirs from the event, tossed the purse I carried that day, and even got a new phone. Additionally, I deleted the photos from the event. Everything slowly started getting better, and my life no longer felt like a twisted horror movie. I moved into a better apartment. My illness was suddenly gone, and the strange occurrences at night all stopped. Who knows if this is a true story or if she made it up for attention, but either way, it carries a lesson. Whatever you place your attention on is where the energy flows. And she made it very clear that she was a fan of the spooky and, horror movies and shows. And she even decorated her home in horror memorabilia. But it was when she started to change that, to remove the negative imagery, and eventually her thoughts followed. And she began to experience a better outcome. The sickness went away, and she was no longer experiencing all those weird things that she was experiencing when she still had all of this attachment to the horror. I want to know your thoughts about this story. Do you think that the mocking of the Annabelle doll is what opened her up to receive this negativity in her life? Or do you think it's all just a coincidence and she's just finding blame in the Annabelle doll? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. While you're there, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe if you have not already. And of course, thank you all so much for being here and spending your time with me. I love you. And I'll see you next time. Bye.